My, good, you're here. I am so excited. Guess what? I hope this isn't about your podcast again. Why, did you finally listen to it?
Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. The Groomer Next Door production. You're listening to BYOTP Radio. Coming up next, the Groomer Next Door. The Groomer Next Door Podcast.
Dun, 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 dun.
Hello, Pups and Kittens, and welcome to another fun-filled episode of The Groomer Next Door. I'm your host, Chris Green. Sitting next to me, as always, is the fabulous Sarah.
Hello.
And working on the technical side is Claire.
Hello.
All right, this is episode 174 with Gary, founder of Darwin's Natural Pet Products. We're going to actually explore the whole world of raw diet for your dogs and your cats in just a moment. But before we do that, let's actually look at the fact of the week. One female dog and her female children can produce up to 4,372 puppies in just 7 years, which gives proof that let's get our dogs spayed and neutered so that this doesn't happen. And this is, of course, in retrospect of irresponsible pet parents. So have to kind of take the place for them at sometimes because this does happen. How many times do we actually rescue puppies that are just, in weird places?
Yep.
Yeah, it's not always good. All right, well, let's dive into the weekly roundup.
The weekly roundup. Yeehaw.
Not a lot to go over, but what we do have to go over is really important, and I'm going to leave that one to you. I'm going to pass that mic over to you about Pretty Pitty.
Well, Pretty Pitty, which is we call her Pippy when out in public because most people don't quite care for the word pity. Anywho, when we were at Dickie Bub's,
which we didn't talk about it.
Dickie Bub's is a farm store in a sense that has everything for farms and such. Wonderful place. A great selection of horse stuff, and it's just an amazing store itself. But they had us out for their grand opening, adoption, and silent auction, all this really cool stuff. We took a dog from the shelter and brought it out, and we brought Pitty out as well to kind of strut their stuff and see if there might be somebody that would be interested in adopting her. Well, we did have one applicant for Pitty. I'm kind of scared, or not scared, I'm just sad because we've grown to love Pitty. We've had her for how long?
February, I think we got her.
And we have brought her back to health. We have trained her. We have loved her. And it's like, okay, well, we know that she needs to go to a home, and we know that we cannot keep her. So we do have an applicant that we're going tomorrow to bring Pitty to their house and see how everything works and see how she handles. They do understand that she comes from a very sketchy background and that she was not appreciated like she should have been. So yes, tomorrow's Mother's Day, but they are more than happy to have Pitty come over to meet the family. We'll probably give it a couple days. And if they really want to keep her, then we'll just call it good at that. And if they can't and something's not working out right, then we'll take her back and we'll try again.
Good point. I don't think that there will be a problem. I'm thinking to myself right now as you're talking about that. I'm like, our SUV has from top to bottom cat, dog food, and toys and paper goods. All that needs to go to the raw animal shelter, which we're right over there right now. Guess where we're going after we get done recording?
They're closed.
Nope, until 4. They're open. So.
Oh, good. We got to keep that one bag of dog food that John donated. We're going to give that to Pitty and her family.
So a donation is going, and that was actually thanks to the Girl Scouts, they gathered all of this food for the local shelter, and we have it to bring to the shelter for them. So as you were talking, I'm thinking, oh boy.
Hey, we're right across the street from it. Let's do it now.
Another thing that I have to mention is we actually had Bagheera there. Did we even talk about picking up Oliver? Have we even mentioned that? Because I know we were
picking up Spencer.
Spencer, sorry, I keep calling Spencer Oliver. Spencer went as well to the event. Unfortunately, no cat was able to get any attention. I was a little surprised. Now, things that I will cover, and I've had this conversation a little bit now with a little bit of Q&A on social media. A lot of people don't realize that we're not just a podcast. We're animal rescuers, we're adoptees, we are fosters. We're a one-stop shop. I mean, the podcast is recorded once a week and aired out to you guys. Now, one thing I wanted to mention that the purpose for that was Pity will actually, or Pippy, however you want to say it, there will be a house check, and there will be certain things that the actual applicant has to meet criteria. So don't worry, folks. It's not like we're just going to pull up, ding dong, there's the dog on their front step like a UPS driver, and go. No, it's a lot of things that are in depth.
I still have to Monday morning call the
veterinarian?
Veterinarian for references and stuff like that too. But we'll see how Sunday goes.
Right, and I had this conversation with a really nice guy, one of our, I think, new listeners. He didn't even know what we were doing, and he had asked me about cats. And one thing I had told him is that, we don't allow declawing, we don't allow them to be outdoor cats. There is a house check, all these things. So there are a lot of different regulations that have to go into place before anybody can adopt any of our fosters. So I want to put that out there because it's not, just like I said, not UPS coming to your door dropping off a dog or a cat. All right, well, I guess by that sound, we have somebody at the door. So I guess Gary is joining us from Darwin's Natural Pet Products.
Oh, hello. Hold on a sec. Dad, we have a guest on the podcast.
All right, this week I am so happy to be joined by Gary Tashjian. He is the owner, and I hope I said that right, owner of Darwin's Natural Pet Products. Thank you for being on the podcast.
It's a pleasure, Chris.
And I said your name correctly.
You did. You get points for that.
I always worry. It's I told you this before we even started. I'm always so conscientious. I mean, I have an easy name, so I'm, but I always think, God, please don't butcher a name. Well, let's always start. The simple first question, it's a softball question, and it's the one question I always want to know. The first thing is the origin story. How did you start Darwin's Natural Pet Products?
Sure. Well, I'll go back to when I started feeding raw food. Actually,
okay.
Which is going back now. Gosh, it must be about 20 years ago. I had a dog, and this is a way I think a lot of people that get into this business start this way, or get into feeding raw start this way. I had a sick dog. In this case, it was my old English sheepdog Max, who was about 10 years old, and he was so severely arthritic he could just barely walk. And I tried everything that Western medicine had to offer to him at the time, which was mostly steroids. And they just didn't work, and I didn't like giving him all those drugs anyway. And somebody suggested that I go to a naturopathic vet and try acupuncture. So I did. I went to one of our local vets here in Seattle, Dr. Lemon, and I told him the situation. And his first question was, well, what are you feeding him? And I was taken aback because I didn't understand why that would matter. And I told him very proudly the green bag stuff from Costco because I thought that was a pretty good food at the time. And he gave me some articles to read on pet nutrition and gave me some recipes and said, why don't you try making your dog's food for it and see what that does and come back in a month. So I did that, and within a month I was astounded. Max was up and walking around again. It had a profound impact on his health. And I had another sheepdog at the time, Casey, who had chronic skin problems, and of course when I was making Max's food, I made Casey's food as well, and his skin problems cleared up in a month. So when I went back to the doctor, I said, well, we don't have to do acupuncture because they're all better. And so I finally, in my mind, made the connection that you are what you eat applies to our pets as well as to us. And I wanted to share this information with all of my pet owning friends, but invariably, when I would do that, they would give me the same answer. And it got to the point where I knew what they were going to say before they said it. They'd say, I don't have time to cook for myself, let alone my dog. Mm-hmm. And it's just too expensive to buy it in the store. So that weighed on me when I kept hearing the same answer over and over and over again. And I was at a point in my life where I was looking for a career change. I wanted to run my own business. And this kept coming back to me, that if we could solve the problem of how to make it convenient and affordable for people to feed fresh food to their pets, then that was something that the world needed. Finally, after I had to kind of convince myself that this was something I was ready to take on. I bit the bullet, and we developed some recipes and developed some production capability and went into business, and that would have been 2004.
Wow. And see how simple it is? It's just that simple. I mean, it's always funny. The origin stories are always my favorite, because it a lot of times I kind of tripped over the idea. And that's always how it always goes. And you know what you said, the beginning of that was something that kind of was the basis behind even this podcast. People would bring their dog into their grooming salon and would say, hey, my dog has dry skin, itchy skin, it has all these issues. And the first thing we would say, what are you feeding your dogs? And to this day, we still have that same comment we make. So it's funny. I mean, people don't realize that, there's a problem with my food. Yeah, there's a real problem. But it has such pretty stuff on the bag. That doesn't mean anything. That stuff is bad. And then, and you've seen this firsthand, and you probably have had this conversation with a million people by now. When you tell them wheat, corn, soy, gluten, all this stuff, bad for your dog, but it's good for us, that doesn't mean it's good for them.
I'm not so sure it's good for us either. I'll tell you, when I started looking at recipes and developing recipes, I was also reading some books on human nutrition. And sometimes I wouldn't know which book I was picking up and reading, because it's very similar. I mean, low carb, high protein, moderate fat. A lot of the principles that apply to humans, or that we are applying now to humans, apply to our pets as well. Mm-hmm.
Well, we don't eat gluten. We keep that. We keep that, and it's like, we really think about it. Out of a lot of it, I mean, we have corn in some things, or a lot of things have corn, but you can really watch your own diet. And as I get older, I think, maybe I don't want to eat this stuff. It's like having fast food. I would have loved it as younger and even as a kid, but now I'm like, ew, this is bad stuff. Ever since this whole, this process of looking at dog food. So, one of my things, now, one of the reasons why it's really important for me to have you on is I'm actually looking at my own dog going, I think we take really good care of our Akita, but she still has issues. And I'm thinking, I think she's a candidate for raw diet very strongly. Mm-hmm. And so my question, and this is for me, personally, but I'm pretty sure this is going to help a lot of people out there, is the transition. How would a pet parent, as myself, transition my dog from, a good grain-free diet to raw diet?
Yeah, I think the easy thing is just give it some time. Do it gradually. The problem is, and it's worse for older dogs than for younger dogs. Younger dogs usually don't have that much trouble transitioning, but the problem is that when you're fed a diet of dry food, your gut flora, the good bacteria in your digestive system, it dies off. You don't have enough of it to process, to break down the proteins and other nutrients that are in raw food. So and if you just do it kind of cold turkey, going from one to the other, you're going to overwhelm the dog's digestive system. And then, by the way, the same is true for a cat as well. So the key is to just give it some time, and you can help it along with, probiotics, prebiotics, those kind of things, digestive enzymes, help kind of prime the dog's gut to have these good flora. But another way to do it is to just, I always suggest starting a dog off with maybe a quarter of our food to 3/4 of what they're currently eating, and do that for a couple of days, and then, there's no other way to say it, watch their poop. If it's solid and firm, then you can up it to 50-50 for a couple of days and keep progressing that way until you've completely transitioned them. So give it a week or 10 days or so, and you should be okay. But if you find that for some reason the dog is having some issues and isn't breaking down the food, again, you can either add some probiotics or enzymes to help the process, or just slow it down and give the dog's gut a little bit more time to get used to it. And generally, when you do that, I think you shouldn't have any problems.
Now, with cats, is cats the same way? Do you actually kind of moderately adjust them, or is a cat digestive system a little bit? I would imagine it's different.
With cats, it's almost more psychological. I actually recommend that people take even more time with cats.
Really?
But the reason is kind of different. What we attribute, cats' reluctance to eat something that they're not familiar with, to the cat being finicky.
Mm-hmm.
But my understanding and what I've learned over the years from experts is it really comes from an instinctive wariness because of anything that they're not familiar with. Because in the wild, if you ate something that you weren't supposed to, you could die from it. Mm-hmm. So cats just have an instinctive wariness of eating anything out of the ordinary. Now, having said that, there are some cats that are the exception to that, and they'll eat anything you put in front of them. But generally speaking, it gets to the point where some folks tell me, their cat is like, I eat triangles. I don't eat squares. I just eat triangles. And those square things are new to me. So with cats, I suggest you just sneak it in on them. I mean, give them a teaspoon of our food mixed in with whatever they're currently feeding. And if they'll go for that, then gradually up it, but take even a month to fully transition a cat. And the longer you can take, the better your odds of succeeding. Because I kind of say, this is not a scientific number, but I say 90% of dogs will eventually transition successfully to raw food. But with cats, even half of them just won't go for it. They're just, this is not what I'm used to. I'm not going to eat it.
Wow. And I would have thought that with a cat, just their general nature of the hunter inside of them, they would just automatically go, this is just like, well, I guess my cats are a little bit different. My cats, every so often, because we have a creek right by us, will have a mouse, find its way around, and that cat just, they're hunters. And
they might have so raw food wouldn't be as unfamiliar to them as a cat that's been raised on kibble.
Yeah.
An indoor cat that's seen nothing but kibble its whole life. Even a mouse might look at a mouse and say, "What the heck is that thing?" But it's just out of the ordinary. And again, we attribute it to them being finicky, but it's really a protective device that's they've developed through evolution to protect them against something that could harm them.
Right. Well, only one cat that we have was born on my lap. The rest of them were all rescued. So, but that one that was born on my lap still has that hunter mentality, and none of them now ever go out. They're all indoor cats. But I can tell they want to go out there. They want to hunt. And luckily, I think we've had like maybe 2 mice that have come in over the last 7 years.
Not so lucky for the mouse, but
no. But they do love the idea, and most of the time they'll just find their way because again that creek is so close to us. And boy, if that ever does happen, though, there is times though you'll see them, and maybe it's a spider or something, I don't know, but they're in that hunter mode, and they're just hunkered right by that fridge. You're always going, boy, I hope that's not a mouse. But maybe we just have hunter, or they're female, huntress. I don't know, maybe. So,
well, you know, they say you never really truly domesticate a cat. I mean, they've always got that hunter instinct in them. You don't get that out of them.
and that's why I would have always thought that it would be a quick transition, because it's just, I would think it would be just instinct. But then maybe it's just the cats we have. I don't know.
Yeah.
So now the racial is the question for me, because let's just say your dog has been on it, or even your cat, not excluding either or. So what is the typical the typical amount of food that you should actually give them? What's the ratio?
Sure. Well, the most important thing to remember is it's different for every dog. I'll speak to dogs first, but I think the same is true of cats too. I mean, it depends on their metabolism. It depends on their activity level. So you can't have a one size fits all approach. But having said that, the general rule I generally apply is 2% of body weight. For a moderately active dog with a normal metabolism, I'd start with 2% of body weight. Now, where you vary from that is younger dogs will eat more than that. A rule of thumb for a young dog is feed it as much as you would. Well, one rule of thumb is feed it as much as it wants, for a puppy, or two, feed it as much as you would feed an adult dog. In other words, if it's going to grow to be a 60-pound dog, feed it as if it was a 60-pound dog. The other thing is that small dogs will eat a bigger percentage of their body weight than larger dogs will. So a 20-pound dog might eat 3 or 4% of body weight a day. A larger dog might eat only 1 to 1.5% of body weight a day. But again, these are just guidelines. I think the best guideline is really what they call the rib check test. Feel your dog's ribs. If you can feel the ribs, but they're not protruding, that's a good weight. If you can't feel the ribs, your dog needs to drop some weight, cut back a little bit on the food. If the ribs are really protruding and they don't have any kind of padding on them, then maybe you need to up the amount you're feeding them.
Well, I'm glad. I think my dogs are at good weight. I'm always concerned with that. I know that they're even our Akita, she's 8 years old, 7 or 8. My wife would probably be like, yeah, she's this. I think she's 8, and she's still got that puppy mentality. So I'm always happy about that. Even our pit bull, who is she's got to be about 9. She's as well very energetic, very puppy-like, but and a good weight. But still, that is a concern. I never actually heard the actual rib test. That's a new one for me.
Oh, okay, good. Another thing I kind of tell as a rule of thumb, if people are looking to transition from dry food to raw, and again, it's just a rule of thumb, is that a half a pound of our food would be roughly equivalent to a cup of dry food, of a good quality dry food. Again, that's just a starting point. So if you're feeding 2 cups a day of dry food, you'd probably feed, and if that's the right amount for your dog, then probably a pound of our food a day would be the right amount. That was going to be my next question.
Oh, okay. I was going to do it. So good for you. You're like, I know where I'm going with this. I like that. So I'm going to go a little bit kind of a sidebar here, and I told you I was going to ask you this question. So when you go into the grocery store, you go to a big box store, and you see somebody and they have that just garbage dog food. And like I told you, I asked this to everybody who is in anything to do with pet food, veterinarians, even Cole Harrington. I asked all of them the same question. Do you just want to go over to the person and just educate them? I told you, I feel like I need a little soapbox and kind of stand in the pet food aisle and say, this is wrong, this is wrong. But I always want to know what other people's opinions are. So that's where I'm going to lay to you. Do you have that problem?
I don't do that. I pick my forums for doing that. And when somebody is about to buy their food, I just, and partially I've found from experiences, that's just not the right time to be approaching them, because, I never like to tell somebody that they're doing something wrong. Everybody is trying to do the best they can for their pet. I think. I mean, maybe there are some people that don't, but I mean, if you get a pet, you want to take care of it and do the best you can. I always say that this stuff is like religion for some folks. I mean, as you know, you can find some, well-trained veterinarians who will swear that dry food is the best thing for their pet, or for anybody's pet. And obviously we both know vets that will say just the opposite, that raw food is far better. I don't think I don't think it's constructive to say you're feeding your pet wrong. What I prefer to say is, there's a better way. You already make the connection between nutrition and health. And a lot of people are buying better quality kibbles because they've made that connection. That they know I want grain free, I want good ingredients. I don't want corn to be the first ingredient. And so they're buying a premium or super premium dry food. What I prefer to say is, okay, you're on the right path. Now, here's the next step: is to get off processed food and onto fresh food. Because I don't even like to talk about raw food that much. I mean, to me the difference is not between raw food and dry food or anything like that. It's fresh food versus processed food is the distinction. And generally I say to folks, for us, the less processing you do to our food, the better it is for you. And if people's heads start nodding at that point, then I know there's a connection. If they don't start nodding at that point, then there's nothing I'm going to say after that that's going to convince them. Right. But if they do start nodding, I kind of say, well, the same is true for our pets, and the less processing you do to their food, the better. In the case of dogs and cats, no processing at all is the least processing you can do. They can eat raw food, and if you talk about it that way, I think most people get it. But if you start trying to shame people, or whether you're trying to shame them or not, but just tell them that you're doing something wrong, you're killing. These folks that say you're killing your pet. I could never bring myself to talk to a pet owner that way, because first of all, it's not constructive. It's not going to work. Nobody wants to be told that, and they're going to turn you off. But if you can say, look, you're on the right path, but I think there's one more step you can go, then I think you might be a little bit more successful.
The reason why I love asking this question is I do get alternate answers, and honestly, I always enjoy listening to them, because I'm not going to go up to you and go, man, you're killing your dog with that, but it's, ooh, you actually want to know what's in your dog food. It's more of an education that I like to do, and even at that, my wife stops me almost 9 out of 10 times. Really more like 10 out of 10 times. The fact is it's like, I love asking it. I mean, everybody has I go up to them and I educate them. Or, you and Cole Harrington had the same response. No, I'm not going to, go down that route. And I love to hear the way that you present it, because it's always interesting to me.
Yeah, it was actually a little bit easier before I went into business to talk to people about this, because there was no self-promotion involved. Now I'm kind of like, well, I'm embarrassed to say you really ought to be feeding my food. That's a little harder to do. I just feel a little self-conscious about that. But,
and I get
that. But if they're in an environment, or they ask, certainly if they see one of my dogs and say, "What are you feeding?" They give me an opening to be a little bit more forthcoming.
I can see now. I can really put it all together. It makes a lot more sense. See, I don't have a stake in the game, so by doing the education, it's different. I see how that works.
It's very clear. You're being generous with your advice. In my case, it's just a little bit more of a tightrope I'd have to walk.
Yeah, because then you would be that peddling salesman, door to door, knock, knock, knock. Hi, what do you feed your dog?
Exactly.
I get you. Well, that does make sense. See, okay, that does make a lot more sense to me. So going back into the track, one thing that always has been an interest to me is farms. always, very conscientious on where I get my food. And I know that you're conscientious on this too. So how do you choose the farms where you actually are able to find your product, and what is that like to actually choose the right place and go through that process?
Sure. Yeah, we pay a lot of attention to that. We now visit all the farms that we buy from. The not the produce so much, but the meats. And we look for a couple of things. I mean, first and foremost, we look at how the animals are treated. I like to say I care as much about the chicken as I do about the dog. It's important to me that it's the way of the world that we have to raise a chicken in order to feed our dogs. Right. But I want that chicken, as long as it's on this earth, to have a good life, to have the life of a chicken that a chicken should have. So and the same is true for duck and turkey and beef. So we visit where they are. We make sure that they have enough room to walk around, that they're being fed properly and cared for properly. And we also like to look at how the employees at the particular farm are being treated. Because, if you treat the employees well, then the employees will treat the animals well, we feel. So those are some of the things we look for. We obviously, make sure that they're not getting any antibiotics put into their feed, those kind of things. But those are really the important things we look at. And then we look at the harvesting operation to make sure it's being done in a humane manner.
That is, then that's the key right there. See, that's what's changed my diet is, just the run-of-the-mill, these terrible farms that, you're contracting through there to get your proteins. And so you're able to go into the grocery store. It's so hard because you don't know where this comes from, that comes from. And that changed my diet, not only mine, but my own pets. So that's, and then when you mention that, the fact that you're conscientious on what the employees are going through and how their demeanor and how they're treated, that's going to go light years. Because if they're treated poorly, well, of course, what do you expect? And if they don't hire quality, what do you expect? And I think that's one of the big things. So I commend you on that one, because that was really a real problem for me. Is I was like, oh gosh, I'm pretty sure you're conscientious, and I read your website top to bottom, and I was like, okay, they're conscientious. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I don't want another animal to suffer, so that my dog can eat.
Right.
That's not acceptable to me.
I agree. Now, we've talked about older dogs. We've talked about, middle age, right at the kind of teenage years, I guess you would call it. So let's go down to puppy. Now, what would be the right age to start your puppy on a raw diet?
Well, this is going to be weird. I'll get to where you're getting to, but what I've been told by folks is the best time to start feeding a puppy raw food is 3 generations prior to it being born.
Okay.
And I was told this by Steve Brown, and I don't know if you know Steve. Steve is one of the pioneers in this business. He founded Steve's Real Food years ago, and he does a lot of speaking at forums about this topic. He knows an awful lot about canine nutrition, but he's also bred dogs too. And he says, as profound an impact as nutrition has on the dog you're looking at, the impact on breeding dogs that are fed raw food is even more profound. That you really see it showing up in, that when you feed the mom raw, that litter is healthier, and then when that litter has been fed raw all its life, their litters are in turn healthier. So there's a genetic aspect to feeding raw. But I think what you were asking about is, if you get a puppy, when's the right time to transition to raw?
Yes.
As soon as you get it. As soon as you get it. There's no reason not to.
Okay.
Better that the mom was being fed raw, and then when you wean them off the mom, you can start them right on being fed raw food. That shouldn't be a problem.
I would like to say that the Midwest actually has adopted that, but unfortunately, from my experience, I haven't seen it. It is from and I've been doing this for quite a while. I've noticed that a lot of the different ways of thought on the West Coast, on the East Coast, is not the same as the Midwest. I mean, it still is the big pet food company is acceptable. Yes, obviously there are a lot of people who are conscientious, but I can't think of any lineage that I can think of. Now, I'm pretty sure that there are people who have been on raw diet, but their pups have, or their cats. But most of the time, if you're lucky, you find the right fit for your family at the shelter, pretty sure that they were not fed, or their lineage were fed raw diet. So that's always kind of like, that's why I found it funny, 3 generations before. That's great. And I love that. The unfortunate is, you don't know what the unfortunate backstory is.
And odds are they weren't fed raw.
Yeah.
Raw is still a small percentage of the total market. So, in all likelihood, they were being fed kibble.
Yeah. Well, do you think that raw is still, the raw diet, do you think it's still in that early age, and I realize it's been around for a long time, but do you think it's still one of the things that people are still trying to wrap their brain around?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's a lot more well known now. I mean, I remember when I started the company, we used to have a booth at the Seattle. We still do have every year at the Seattle Kennel Club Dog Show. Mm-hmm. That was one of the first places where we introduced ourselves to the local market here. And I remember the first year we came up there with raw food, and the looks we got from people, and they just said they were incredulous. They just couldn't believe that this was a product that existed.
And this is 2004, right?
Yeah, this would be 2004 exactly. And
so
obviously raw food existed, but it just wasn't well known.
Right, and that's only 13 years, and yet that's where I look at it.
The big and now it's the opposite. It's like, oh yeah, raw food. We know all about that. There are very few people I think that come up to the booth that say, "Gosh, I've never heard of this stuff." They may have heard of it, but never seen it or something like that. But most people understand or they've heard of raw food at least. And I think the big event for that was, back in 2007, I think it was, when they had that melamine contamination in the pet food that came, where the wheat gluten or whatever came from China. Mm-hmm. That made people pay a lot more attention to what they were feeding their pets, because they realized that just because it's, like you said earlier, just because it's in a pretty bag, or even just because my vet recommended it, doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing for my dog. And to be honest with you, I had always focused on the nutritional aspects of why raw was better than kibble. But that episode pointed out to me that there's a food safety aspect of it as well. That you want to know where your ingredients are, and you want to keep the supply chain as short as possible. I mean, I like to talk about, from farm to food bowl, and for us, it's a matter of, it goes from the farm to us directly to the customer, and it's a matter of weeks from one to the other. Whereas, with commercial dog food, with dry dog food, it's not only is it months, but it's multiple steps along the way, and each one of those steps, as you saw back in 2007, there's a risk you take there. Or the more people that are in that chain, the more opportunity there's for something to go wrong.
I think it's even more than just 2007. I mean, I've noticed that recalls are coming quicker and more just in an abrupt stage now than I have ever seen before. And this is what really has driven me into this is why raw is a better source for my pet, my little guys and girls, because I look at all the recalls. I mean, you have something that you could use for euthanasia. You have, contamination. I mean, look, I get it. You're going to get metal pieces from the factory. I understand it. That's part of working with machines. Okay, I'll give a little leeway, and I mean little, but that's so much now, and it seems like it's coming in just such a swift motion, and I just don't get that.
And I have to say, I'm when I hear about these recalls, I mean, my first instinct, regardless of the company, is I feel bad for them. I don't feel that any company is out to harm its customers. But when you have a supply chain that goes, halfway around the world, it gets harder and harder and harder to know what you're putting in the bag. The ones that just came out recently where they had that drug you were referring to, mm-hmm. I'm sure they didn't want that to be in their product, but they didn't know. Because they were that many steps away from their source. That they couldn't have confidence in it. So I'm in a way, I'm glad that we're getting these recalls, because it means somebody's minding the store and somebody's paying attention to these things. It might have been that the food was just as bad 10 years ago, but the regulatory environment wasn't as good. So I feel like pet food is better now than it's been, and certainly, the regulatory environment is stronger for pet food than it's been in the past. I think it's just the nature of how it's made that you're seeing more and more of these episodes that you're referring to.
I don't know. I will respectfully disagree. I think that they all know the garbage that they're putting in. And from my standpoint, I mean, I'm probably just the one that's I'll go out there on a limb, out there and speak and say that. I see the differentials between, but it's when I look at it, I go, that you're putting product into every kibble that's obviously not good for the dogs. I mean, there's obviously vets that are telling, yeah, you probably shouldn't put that drug in there. You shouldn't put that, piece of meat that should never have been ground up into the kibble. You shouldn't do this and this. They just look at the cost side of it. And for that right there, those reasons, that alone tells me they're conscious of their decisions.
Yeah, you may be right. I hate to think poorly of anybody. You might be right, but I make pet food. Other people make pet food. It's hard for me to believe that somebody would do that consciously, but I know that there's a lot of these big companies. There's pressures to bring it in 1/10 of a cent cheaper.
Yeah.
And that can lead to maybe some bad judgment.
Yeah, and I think that's what it really is. I mean, we got to make sure our shareholders are getting every ounce that they can get, and so we're going to have to cut the corners. And look, my wife is the same as you. Very optimistic that everybody is doing things the right way, everything's going perfect, and everybody's holding to the same standards, and it's always upright. And I really love that and appreciate that. I, unfortunately, on the other side, I'm the one that says, yeah, they know what they're doing, and they're lying.
All right. Well, you might be right. Yeah,
but I like it. I like your stance, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I love it, and I love the fact that you think that way, because honestly, I wish I could. Now, since we're on the topic, because we're talking about ingredients and we're talking about unique formula, I'm going to actually talk about the good unique formula and ask you to explain your unique formula for dogs.
Okay.
You have multiple kinds.
Our basic recipe is 75% meat, 10% of which is organ meat, mm-hmm. and then 25% vegetables, roughly half root vegetables, half green leafy vegetables. And then we also add a small amount of vitamin and mineral premix to balance things out. That's basically the formulation, and we've gotten there through, and every product is a little bit different depending on the meat, the characteristics of the protein. We've gotten there through consultations with veterinary nutritionists. Steve Brown, who I mentioned earlier, helps us with our formulations. Barbara Royal and Karen Becker, who I think you probably know, have also helped us. We have a line of meals called Intelligent Design. That's our prescription line that is designed for dogs that have special needs like kidney support or liver support or cancer support. And Karen and Barb helped us with those formulations. They brought to bear a lot of the clinical experience they have that these ingredients are helpful for dogs and cats that have these particular problems.
Now,
so we rely on, we like to say that the expression I say is inspired by nature, informed by science.
Yeah.
So that's how I like to characterize our diet. We start with what their instinctive diet is, and then bring to bear whatever scientific knowledge that we have to round that out.
Now, the one thing that was a curiosity, and I was just like, I'm dying to ask this question. The vegetables, how does that factor in? Because again, I always say the one thing that about doing this podcast is I'm the first listener, and I'm the one that's hopefully learning as I'm going. And I saw the vegetable aspect, and I was like, okay, I'm curious. Why vegetables?
Yeah, that's good. I don't get that so much now, but I got that a lot in the early years. And this is going back to where I say this stuff is like religion. There are people that dogs are carnivores. They should never eat vegetables. They should eat just 100% meat. And then there are other folks that say no vegetables. There are people that say that in the wild they would eat the stomach contents of their prey and explain it that way. There are different schools of thought on this. Okay, the one I adhere to is that first of all, dogs, even though they have the same digestive systems as wolves, they're different than wolves in that wolves are constantly walking around, so they're exercising their digestive tracts. Dogs, as we know, domestic dogs, they sleep most of the time. And so, when I've talked to our advisors, whose opinions I respect, they tell me that domestic dogs need more roughage in their diet, to help with their digestive system. So a lot of the vegetables do provide some nutritional aspects, but a lot of it is for the fiber, to help with their digestion.
And that's why I said, I wasn't one of those people that's going to go, no, they're carnivores. No, actually, I was thinking, hey, there's got to be a scientific reason. And one of the things that you said is, well, when they're actually tearing up the whatever their prey was, it would have been in the prey's digestion. So that makes sense too to me. I'm like, oh, okay, that does make sense. And
and also even wolves are opportunistic. I've read some studies. This is the fascinating stuff. Of people have gone out and analyzed wolf poop. Their scat, and they find that there's vegetables in there too. There's fruits and vegetables. So wolves will eat whatever's available to them. If they didn't catch an animal that day and they're hungry, they'll eat berries or flora. To get some nutrients that way. So it's not like they just eat meat in the wild. They'll eat whatever they need to stay alive.
And you don't have to worry about talking about poop on this podcast. We're always referencing it. That is really our scientific go. The childlike mentality I have laughs whenever I hear the word poop. But, again, that's just me. But I actually really do resource poop in a lot of different categories to identify different purposes. You had earlier you mentioned, hardened poop, and we've talked about why it's soft. So trust me, you don't have to worry about that.
Okay, all There's always about 5 minutes into any conversation I have with a dog owner. It's always, you get to that topic. So
right. I'm so with you. I know. It's like, well, you'll ask that other question, what are you feeding your dog? And the next question followed up is, what is their poop like? It makes me think of Jurassic Park when they actually were looking at the dinosaur poop. That's how it always references in my head. I don't know. Now, you had mentioned Dr. Becker and Dr. Royal, how they came up with their science diet. So I actually had the 4...
Let's not call it that. Don't call it that.
You're right. That's right. That's right. That is an excellent scientific dietary prescription. Yes, you're right. Yeah, that's a story I was disappointed in them. But you had mentioned that, and I wanted to actually go over it because you actually had 4 different kinds for the actual dog. You had the canine kidney support, you had the canine liver support, the cancer support, and the joint and mobility. So I was just going to say, let's definitely topic on that and, just briefly explain that because I think it's really interesting.
Yeah. I'm not the right person to talk chapter and verse about each ingredient as to what we're trying to do. There are people in our company who can speak better to that, and of course, Doctors Becker and Royal can speak better to that. But we came up with that line because we didn't feel that the options that were available to people whose dogs or cats had those problems were quite right. I mean, if you look at, and I'll say the name, the science diet. If you look at the ingredients in there, a lot of times those KD or ID, they call them, lines. The ingredients, they're just horrible. They start with corn and wheat and all those things that we know shouldn't be in there. There's an old school approach, and I'll speak mostly to, I think this is more the case with liver support, or the kidney support diet. That there's the old school approach was reduce the protein levels because that's what strains them, the organs, and you want to by reducing the protein level, you reduce the amount of work that the organs have to do. What Dr. Becker and Dr. Royal found was now you're, by doing that, you're reducing the loads on the organs, but you're also starving the animal of the vital proteins it needs. So the more contemporary, I guess, approach to this is to feed proteins, but feed good quality proteins, and feed a balanced meal that supports the organs rather than starving the body, which is what the old school approach took. But there was not a food in the marketplace that embodied that approach. I mean, if you had a dog that had kidney or liver problems, your only choice was really science diet. Right. So we under their auspices, we developed these other lines that took this other philosophy. And then again embodied some of the clinical research they had as to what herbs were also very effective in dealing with these things. And we've seen some great success with it. Dogs that they say that after just a few months on our meals, their numbers come back and they're very much improved. So we're kind of pleased to see that it's a small part of our business, but we think it's important because we're really the only folks out there that are offering this.
And one thing that always has had both my wife and my fear, front of our head and the back of our mind, everywhere, has always been joint and mobility, because we have an Akita, and hip dysplasia is very common in a dog like this. So that's another concern. It's like, oh gosh, she's not a young kid anymore, and yet she always got to worry about that. So I looked at that and went, oh boy, that's a big deal. That's a big deal.
Yeah. Now, raw food in itself is good for joint mobility. The bones, the ground bone that we use in our poultry products has glucosamine in it. So you're getting some of it just by eating our regular meals, but again, our joint mobility meal is designed to emphasize that even more.
And that's one thing that I learned, and I learned this through Dr. Royal, and I learned this through watching, the documentary Pet Fooled, is with raw diet, one thing that, and this is what I took away, hopefully I took away the right things, is that raw diet, it's not going to hurt your dog with the dehydration. With the kibble, they run the risk of dehydration, and it's just not, it's not going to actually work the same. This actually is going to keep the fluids in and help your dog go.
Yeah.
So that's one.
And that's an even bigger issue. That's an even bigger issue with cats than for dogs, because here's another. Cats are not instinctive water drinkers. They are used to getting all their moisture requirements from their prey. So when you feed a cat dry food, you're asking, and then expect it to supplement it with water, you're asking it to do something that's not instinctive to it. And a lot of the crystal problems, the kidney problems, that cats run into these days, are we're told by our advisors that they're attributable to a dry food diet. So even though, frankly, we sell a lot more dog food than we do cat food, in a way, cat food it's more important for cats to eat this way than for dogs.
There's not a great deal, and I'm again just as much of a cat lover as I am a dog lover. There's not a great deal of cat food out there that's what I'd call great. That's the sad part, for lack of better words. So that's one of my big things, and that's why, as you can see, I'm going to transition, because I don't want anybody to think this is a dog-only conversation. Nope, we are going to transition from here to cats. Perfect time.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
So, we've talked about dogs and everything. You have unique formulas for cats as well, and that's something that I wanted to be able to touch on, because you have options with your cat food with chicken, you have turkey, you have duck. And so, I'm always curious, all about the product and how you actually come about this, and pretty much learn from you. So I'm just going to kind of say, please educate.
Well, we got into we started out the company just offering dog food, and we started making cat food really in response to our customers. We were saying, my cat keeps stealing my dog's food. Can you do something about that? And so we said, okay, let's come up with cat food. And it took us a little while to research it, and there's the knee-jerk reaction is, oh yeah, it's the same thing, but it really is different. The cat's needs are different than the dog's needs, and whereas I said earlier that our dog food is 75% meat, 25% vegetables, our cat food is virtually 100% meat. Cats are carnivores, and so it's a different diet for them, and you have to pay attention to specific ingredients. Taurine being the most important one. That are cats have unique needs for those that dogs don't.
And it's funny because people think, I don't know why, I think that it's just a misconception. People think, and this is just what I've heard over the years, people think that dogs are more carnivore, and I'm like, no, actually cats are. Again, going back to that whole mouse thing, and here we have cats that are indoor, still instinctive. So I thought that was really strange when I was reading that.
Yeah, you could put vegetables in front of a dog and it would eat it, but you could put a vegetable in front of a cat and it would starve to death before it would eat that.
Right. Oh my gosh, that is so true. Now, I asked the question when it came to with dogs, and I know we covered it, but the transition with cats we had covered, slowly. The same question is going to go with the kitten. Obviously, is there a certain way? And I'm talking like, when they're able to eat hard food, not this 3-week-old kitten. I'm talking about when they're able to eat hard food. Is there a transition that you should do with kittens to raw diet?
That's a good question. I don't. My instinctive answer is to say the same answer for the dogs, is just do it. Do it slowly. Again, with kittens, with younger animals, you don't have to worry that much about the transition. But I've never been asked that question before, to be honest with you. Like I said, I'm presuming it's the same as it is for puppies. That you can do it as soon as they're weaned from their mom. You can start feeding them, a little bit. In other words, as they're weaning from their mom, you start feeding them some raw food. But that's I'll have to get an answer to that. I don't know that it would be any different, but I can't say for sure that it's the same.
Well, I mean, I'm glad I threw something in there that was unique.
You got me on that one.
Okay. Well, I don't actually set out for that, but I always look at this I look at it from two perspectives. Whenever I look at anything pet related, I think of it as a consumer and as an educator. And I can't be educated until I talk to people like you and learn different things. So I have to ask these questions, and I think, well, it has to be the same, right? It would have to.
Yeah, I would think so. But like I said, that's a new one for me. So I'll have to get the answer to that one.
Well, that works.
Just to make sure I'm not misinforming you.
No. I'm glad to actually throw a question in there that that even can stump you. Now we actually had talked about this when it came to dog food and now cat food. But now you had said, you could put some kibble in the actual area, their food bowl. We're a little bit more people-ish kind of in their food bowl. It almost kind of has it separated. It's all nice and pretty. I mean, we're those people. But do you have a specific, I mean, you don't have to say the name, but you have like grain-free type dog and cat food you would put with it? Or do you actually have a specific dog food that you really say, yeah, this is the product that I've told people to use, and anybody else has actually said, yeah, you should use this dog food or cat food?
I don't, to be honest with you. I don't pay a whole lot of attention, and I'm no more knowledgeable. I'm probably less knowledgeable about dry food than your average dog owner. I mean, I haven't fed it for 25 years.
Yeah.
Or not quite that long, 20 years probably. So I mean, I hear the same brands you hear. I could rattle some of them off, but I don't know that they'd be any good or not. I get my education on dry food from the same place as most people, from television, and that's not exactly a great place to get it. So we thought about at times, should we know that our customers feed dry food in some cases, that they don't. A lot of our customers don't feed it 100% raw, and we thought about whether we should offer a dry food, but it's kind of hard to do that and be true to our message, which is you shouldn't be feeding this stuff.
Well,
or you should do it as an exception. I draw the analogy to you mentioned fast food earlier. That it's not a problem to go to McDonald's or Jack in the Box every once in a while. It just shouldn't be your regular diet. And I kind of feel the same way about dry food. Is if you feed it every once in a while, it's not the worst thing in the world. But day in, day out, it's not good for your dog in the long term.
See, and that's where I was going to go. Well, are you thinking about it? So you kind of caught me there.
Yeah. We've done that thinking about it. And we've just said, look, if somebody wants to do that, they can do their homework and figure that out. We don't have an opinion on that.
Yeah. Always good to ask that question. I'm gonna go with one more question when it comes to the cats, and then I'm gonna throw a wild question in that I didn't even have written down.
Right.
Yeah. It's actually not that bad, but let's go into recommended servings for a cat, because that's a curiosity. Now, I like to hear what you have to say on raw diet. What is the actual recommended serving?
Well, we talked about for the dogs. Another one for the cats. I don't know the answer to it. I tend to think of cats as being equivalent to small dogs. In other words, probably 3 to 4% of body weight a day would be right. And I guess that the rib check test might apply to cats as well. I don't know, to be honest with you. As you can tell, I kind of know a lot more about dogs than I do about cats.
No, that's okay. I mean, again, not ever really trying to throw these massive curveballs at you. It was always curiosity, because it's, I'm always afraid. My biggest fear with everything, and I think this is probably a generic standard pet parent fear, is I'm feeding them too much, I'm not feeding them enough. So that's where I'm always conscientious.
And I think the general fear that it's probably more common to be feeding them too much. Now, the difference with cats is, well, I take it back, they will overeat, but not as much as dogs will. But I'd say the same thing. I mean, you can look at a cat. We've seen all those charts in the vet's office of what an obese cat looks like and what a cat that's malnourished looks like. And I just say, look at your cat the same way. If you can see its ribs and it looks emaciated, it needs to put on some weight. If you see that it's got a gut that's hanging out, down low, it probably needs to lose some weight. I think visually you can kind of tell, and that's a far better measure than, feed it this percentage of body weight or this many cups a day or whatever. You just got to know your animal.
Right. Well, always curious on that. Now here comes the wild question. That's
all right. I'm sitting down. I'm ready for it.
I've asked this question of a few. Now, one person lied to me. I'm not going to mention who, and they ended up doing it. But the question I have you ever considered, now, one of my favorite shows out there, that's why I'm going to ask the question, have you ever considered going on Shark Tank?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, well, I always ask myself when I do watch, I kind of get a kick out of it. Not religiously, but I enjoy it every once in a while. I do. I have. I don't anymore. I do. I mean, we're a little bit past that point. And frankly, I part of it is the personality thing. Is I think I can't take Mr. Wonderful. I don't know. It to me, they're not. It's not our cup of tea anymore. I mean, when we were first starting out, I thought, geez, that'd be great. I'd probably go on there not so much to get funded, but to get publicity,
the exposure. Right.
Yeah. I understand that there's a lot of folks that do that. They have no intention of getting money, but it's certainly good for their brand. I'd love to, and I'd love to get advice from them. If Mark Cuban and some of the others. I mean, I respect their business savvy certainly, and they've been through a lot of things that they could teach me quite a bit. But the thought of getting up in front of them and the world and kind of talking about my business, in the kind of detail that you have to, I don't think that'd be right for us right now.
Now, I'm not going to hear that you're on Shark Tank in the next coming months like I did with somebody else.
I would be surprised. I mean, and it especially interests me when they have other pet products on there. There was one a while ago that it didn't get funded, and I was kind of surprised because I thought it was a pretty good idea. I can't remember exactly what it was right now, but I mean, I think it was another kind of pet delivery business. Do you recall what I'm talking about?
I remember.
Maybe that was who you were talking to.
No.
That's who you're talking about.
Actually, no. The person I'm talking about, they actually Mr. Wonderful actually did invest in their product.
You don't want to tell me what company it was?
It was called Apollo Peak Wines.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, it wasn't a pet company. Okay.
Well, no, it was a wine company for pets. It's for dogs and cats. It's a great wine company, and it's not real grapes, obviously. They were on our podcast, and I asked that question, and the actual CEO, he said no, but in fact they were actually in process. So, yeah.
I understand it's quite a laborious process. I mean, you see them on there, but there's a lot that goes on before they ever get on camera. Yeah.
He didn't go in. He'll be back on the podcast and he'll explain, what the process was like.
All right. Now I'm going to go try and find the episode.
Actually, it was on. Oh gosh. I know I covered an audio, a couple weeks ago. It said recap of Apollo Peak Wines. But it was on. I want to say like 3 Fridays ago. It was a new episode.
Okay.
So actually, Hulu might have it. I'm now giving promo to a sponsor that's not paying me. But yes, it should be on there. Apollo Peak Wines, who was the first guest that came out Great guy. I mean, the way he was on on TV was how he was on the podcast. And, when he said Mr. Wonderful, I'm like, oh, he got funded by him. And I'm like, man, Mr. Wonderful likes wine, and this is a great product.
When you said that was the first thing I thought of.
So no, it was a good. It was a good episode. But I do know of the pet product. It was I think it was like almost in a sense a raw diet shipped all over the country, and I remember it. I don't remember the name though.
I don't know if it was raw. I think it was. It might have been cooked, but it was.
Might have been.
It was definitely a pet food that was being shipped, and I was just kind of surprised it wasn't funded. Yeah,
we actually had somebody who does that. They actually have the cooked diet, and it's an interesting concept. I don't know. Again, I learn everything through listening to you guys. I always say, one thing about doing the podcast is I'm giving everybody options. What you do with them is your choice. But I'm hoping that every time we do an episode about something, whether it's a product that's out there, or it's a veterinarian talking about things, it's, whatever, it's giving people idea and hope and, maybe changing their outlook. And that was kind of my mindset. But, it was something very similar to his. Actually, I remember he told me that somebody did get funded by, I want to say, an investor, and quality control went down. So, yeah.
Well, that's something you always have to be worried about, that if you get a spike in your, I'm sure there is a Shark Tank effect that drives your sales. And when you're a small company, you really have to pay attention to making sure that your quality stays up there. I mean, we used to kid in our early days about, we'd love for Oprah to mention us. And then we were like, we shudder then what impact it would have on us if that happened.
I would like to see this podcast hit the top 300. Unfortunately, one thing that's really strange about doing a pet podcast is that there is no genre on iTunes, and we're really one of the only ones that are doing it. So it is a unique kind of niche, but it is interesting. So anyway, I'm going off topic, but I wanted to ask the Shark Tank question. I had to ask it.
All right. No problem. Yeah. It's a good question. I mean, I think every small business, you can't help but watch that show and say, wow,
what about me?
That could be me.
Yeah, I would think so. So I found this really interesting, and I don't know, maybe I'm just weird. So I really found your shipping to be very unique, and I liked how you did this. You have multiple hubs.
Yeah.
And I found that was interesting. So it's not like you have one just on the West Coast or one on the East Coast. You have quite a few.
No, we just have the two. Right now we're looking at additional ones, but we just have Seattle and Pennsylvania.
Okay, I thought there was something else.
No, we're looking literally right now. We're kind of researching where a third one should go. But we can reach everybody in the U.S. within 2 days between those two hubs. We tried when we started out shipping. We tried doing it out of Seattle, and we found that there's no amount of dry ice that you can put in a package and have it get to Southern Florida in decent shape. And so we realized that we needed to do something different, and so we contracted with a shipping company or a fulfillment company to handle our East Coast or east of the Mississippi shipments.
I can't tell you how many times I hear about, and even just down to being a consumer, where they'll have one hub and it's so far away, and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. It takes twice as long. Being in this part of the country, it's like, wow, what am I going to do? So I thought
when we started, in hindsight, if I'd known we were going to do this when I started the company, Seattle probably isn't the best place to have a company that ships nationwide. We're tucked up in the Northwest, but that was when I started the company. I was just looking to be a Seattle company.
Mm-hmm.
It was only a few years later that we said, well, let's go national.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we expanded to the East Coast. Yeah, probably something like St. Louis, where you are, would have been a better idea for this, because you're just a day or two from everywhere in the country.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what maybe I just, when I was looking at the map, I was like, oh, there's something right in a central area. That's a good idea. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, wow, you really have covered all bases. Now, of course, as I say this, behind the scenes, top secret, people are working, and I'm pretty sure you're kind of in that proximity, which that's smart. That's how you do it. So now the last, questions I have is, well, like, for one is, have I left something out? Is there something that I really should have talked about, or something you wanted to mention?
We should ask me that earlier. I could have thought about it. I think that everybody, it's been a very pleasant conversation. I like the questions you've asked. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. What we haven't talked about, and this is completely off topic.
I do that all the time.
Near and dear to your heart, which is rescue.
Yes.
I appreciate what you do. We're fortunate here in the Northwest is we actually have to import dogs here. There's a shortage of shelter dogs here in the Northwest. And we found that out because we started a program last year where we would adopt dogs or foster care dogs from the local shelter, and we particularly looked for dogs that were had been in the shelters for a long time, and so we could rehabilitate them, get them on a good diet and get them healthy. And the idea was we'd put them out to our customers and get them to adopt them. And we placed about 25 dogs that way. 19 of them with our employees.
Nice.
So we'd adopt them, and somebody would fall in love with it, and we'd never get a chance to offer it to a customer because one of our employees would adopt it. And then we learned more and more about that issue of pet homelessness, I'll call it, and that's something that's near and dear to my heart. And even though we suspended that program, we kind of ran out of employees that could adopt dogs, but it's something that's near and dear to us, and I'm glad to hear that you're active in doing that, and I'm hoping that more folks will be. I mean, not just in foster caring and sheltering and adopting, but also in spay and neuter, because I think that's the critical thing that's going to address this problem. Is if we can just avoid one unwanted litter, that eases that. So, the demands on the system. So I think that actually our country is not that far from getting to a point where we can be a no-kill country. And that's something that, as time goes on, I personally want to, and I want DARWIN'S to be able to support achieving that goal.
I really hope that happens. I really do. I mean, I unfortunately live in the puppy mill capital of the country, and luckily it kind of disbanded out to the surrounding areas, but it's going to make its way, and that's the hard part. And it's kitten season, so that's been unfortunately our objective is taking in mama cats with their litters and trying to find placement. But beforehand, they always end up getting spay or neutered, and with all of ours, because we're lucky to work with a nice nonprofit here in our town. And but yeah, it is a challenge. I did not know that it was a shortage on shelter dogs and cats. That's an interesting one.
Just up in King County, and I hope everybody else goes shipping their dogs up here.
No.
But I talked to some of the folks at the shelter here, and we actually do bring dogs in from Eastern Washington and sometimes from California, because there's more demand for them than there is supply, which is a nice situation to be in.
The one question I never asked you is, how did you come up with the name for your company?
Oh yeah, okay.
I never asked that. I'm sorry. That should have been my first question. I guess it was part of the origin, but I was just sitting back listening.
I didn't bring it up. Yeah. So I wanted a name that would represent the intersection of nature and science. because that's where I think we operate as a company. You know, I earlier said that the line we use is inspired by nature, informed by science.
Mm-hmm.
And as I thought through, okay, what's a name that represents that? Charles Darwin does represent that. I mean, he too was inspired by nature, informed by science. So
mm-hmm.
so that was the genesis of it. And as you know, our primary product line, the flagship product line, we call it is called Natural Selections.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also inspired by Darwin's. But every once in a while, we would occasionally hear from somebody who was offended by that didn't believe in evolution for whatever reason. And so, kind of in the interest of being balanced about that, when we developed our prescription line, with Dr. Royal and Dr. Becker, we called that intelligent design. So we're representing both schools, both natural selections and intelligent design that way. But the genesis of it is Charles Darwin.
I kind of figured.
If you look at our logo, you'll see it's a beagle in a boat, and that's a little bit of a visual pun, because when Darwin sailed to the Galapagos, the name of his boat was the HMS Beagle.
There you go.
So that's where that comes from.
I like that. I like it. I mean, I had a feeling. I really was, like you said, I was looking for the genesis to it, and I was, okay, that makes all the sense in the world. And, people are going to, gripe about everything, whether it's, evolution or it's the weather. So there's just no way of making everybody happy. Lastly, I know I kind of jumped off there, but tell everyone how to order, or even just suggestion on how to look at the product and do more research if we haven't covered it all.
Okay. Yeah. Well, our website is DARWIN'S.com. That's Darwin's with an S, PET.com. That tells the whole story there. We have 3 lines of food. Like I said, our flagship line is Natural Selections. That's made with all free-range meats and organic vegetables. We have a second line called Zoologics, which is the same recipe as Natural Selections. It just uses conventional human quality ingredients. So I kind of say Natural Selections is whole foods, and Zoologics is Safeway. Both good quality, just depending on, personally how you eat would probably dictate which of those two you'd want. But we developed Zoologics for, people who have a lot of dogs who are on a budget for whatever reason. We want everybody to be able to feed their dogs this way, so it's a little bit more affordable. And then, as I said, we developed a third line called Intelligent Design. That's a prescription line for dogs with special needs. But if you go there, we've got a killer introductory offer. So we're a subscription company, but you can sign up. We'll figure out how much you need, or help you figure out how much you need. Put you on a regular schedule, which you can change or cancel at any time. So there's no obligation. And then we have a 10-pound introductory offer, so you can make sure that your dog will like it or your cat will like it, and before you have to place a full order, and also transition them that way. We have customer service staff waiting to help people. So if you have any questions, we're happy to take the call, and we do offer menu consultations, which you can sign up for on our website. So if you have any questions about how to transition your dog, or how much you should feed, or what meals to feed in combination with others, you can just give us a call, and we'll be happy to talk to you about that.
This is why I always say, I always ask, tell us how to order, because you put it in such an eloquent way. I would never be able to put it that way. It was you hit every button on there that I would never have been able to do. So that's why I'm glad I asked you that way. And I will have and I will have all of this on a description page. So if you have any more questions on it, you can just read the description, and it'll be a lot more. Well, thank you for doing this.
My pleasure. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Gary, for being on the podcast. I really appreciate you stopping in and giving us some of your time. There's a couple things I wanted to go over, some things that I was really, really, really impressed by. I know I'm going to take away one of yours, but the farms, how they check for all their farms to make sure that the actual meat that they use comes from a valuable, resource. The farms are well, maintained.
Well, it's making sure that the animals that are here on this earth for the time that they are treated well. And that, to me, is the most responsible way of slaughtering animals, is to make sure that they are having a good life before that happens. It's unfortunate, but at the same time, it is a chain of life, and dogs eat meat.
Right. And cats are carnivores. I mean, there's no way around that.
Exactly. And like you said, if a cat had a choice between eating a mouse and eating an apple, it's going to eat the mouse. You know
I love that. I loved it.
So, but what also, just take it one step further, he goes and talks to the employees.
Right.
And to make sure the employees are happy.
Right.
Because if the employees aren't happy, they're going to take it out on those animals.
Right.
We see it almost every day, where people are fed up, they're angry at something, and they take it out on the animal. It still happens, and it's unfortunate, and it needs to stop. So when he takes it one step further and makes sure everything is okay, you can only do as much as you can do, and it looks like he's doing all he can physically do to make sure that it's responsible.
And that was admirable, responsible, and I was really impressed by that. That really caught me, being that we're very conscientious on our intake and what we eat, and obviously what our pets eat. It was nice to know that he was too. So I really appreciate that, and I loved his origin, how he thought he was feeding the right food, and he was proud of what he actually was feeding his dogs until he found out otherwise. And I love that, because that's really what it comes down to. I can relate.
It makes it to where, oh well, we're the same way.
Right.
We didn't know any better. But at first, we used to feed our Akitas gravy train.
Oh, way back
when.
Okay, I was not ours.
No, when I want to say, I was in like 3rd or 4th grade.
So about 10, 11.
Yeah, we were feeding gravy
Probably
train.
10.
We added water and it mixed up, and it actually made this really cool thing that the dogs just scarfed down. Well, then we got another Akita, and we educated ourselves a little bit more. And so from gravy train, we went to IAMS.
Mm-hmm.
IAMS was a heck of a lot better food than the gravy train was. Well, then we started doing more research, and we switched it from IAMS to Nutro, natural choice. Because at that point in time, that was one of the best dog foods around. And then now here we are. We're on a complete grain-free salmon food. And here we are educating ourselves even more. We need to bump it up and start with the raw. Katana is having such problems right now. She has chewed herself raw again. And she's got her allergies medication in her. She's on her flea and tick medicine. And she recently had it back to get any kind of debris off. And don't tell me it's because we didn't wash it off the soap. Because I know you washed it off.
Yeah, you can watch videos on this.
Yeah. So the only other thing that is going wrong here is that she's allergic to something that's in the food that's in all of the dog kibble.
Right.
And there's always at least 1 or 2 ingredients that's in every single dog kibble. And the other part that really stuck out to me was how it was a no-brainer, kind of a duh, how'd you not realize this, but a mind-blown moment too, is how he said that there's so many more steps in dog kibble than there is with raw food. Slaughterhouse, then your house. That's it. And dog kibble, you go, the slaughter, the baking, the putting the ingredients in, the bagging, and sent out. Months later, your dog's finally eating that food. Versus a matter of a couple days, a couple weeks from getting it from them.
Right.
That was a mind blown. But yet at the same time was a duh kind of moment. I was like, no kidding, why did I think of that?
Well, see, we did this episode, obviously it all started back with the Cole Harrington Pet Fooled episode, and really looking, evaluating our own practices. I mean, we've always been grain-free, and as you said, you're talking about your first Akita, which you guys had back in the 90s, and the progressions. Let's be realistic, dog food knowledge has become more of a priority in the last 10 years. 2007 was when everybody's eyes opened up, and before that, nobody really thought about it. Now I look at the situation and I go, okay, well, I had Gary on because I was in a sense interviewing him for the possibility of moving our own dog to raw diet, and that was how it all started. Was, well, our dog needs it, and I wanted to make sure we were going in the right direction because we do this every week. We talk about dietary, all the time. I mean, nutrition is our main focus, and we're always looking at, hey, are we doing the right thing? Is there something more we can do? And the answer is, yeah, there is. Okay, do I need to cut back a latte so that my dog can have a little bit more? Yes, I can. And that's what this is all about. Yeah, I can cut back a latte, and that'll pretty much draw that line.
And we've also had to stop Belle from having hard kibble.
Well, yeah, but we knew that this was coming the moment we rescued her. I mean, she had oral issues from the very beginning. When we got her a couple of years ago, this dog had been, I mean, she ate garbage. I mean, she was sad.
And the health benefits of raw is unbelievable.
Yes.
It's, you want to spend less money at a vet, change them to raw. That's just it. They sit there and they gnaw on their food. They sit there and gnaw on these raw bones. It keeps their teeth a lot more healthier. And in general, it just makes your dog happy. So I'm looking forward to getting Katana started on this raw.
I am too. And that's why I asked about vegetables. I'm like, vegetables? Really? I mean, that was a question mark. Like 25%. Okay, why is there vegetables? And I mean, I said it. Hey, you know what? Please tell me. I'm not asking as a you're raw. No, I'm actually needing the education. And I say this all the time. The first listener of this podcast is me when I'm talking to our guests because I'm learning from them. And I appreciate their knowledge because I'm asking you because I have no idea myself. I'm not here, I'm not here to catch you off guard. I'm here to learn.
Right. And it makes sense. It makes all the sense in the world when he was talking about wolves. And we all know that one dog food company that loves to say how dogs are just like wolves and have the spirit of a wolf and stuff. And so you need to feed it like a wolf. But he's right. Dogs don't constantly roam like wolves do. They don't constantly hunt like wolves do.
Was that ever shocking, the whole process? I didn't even think that.
Our dogs are couch potatoes. I mean, there's some out there that do agility, some out there that do miles upon miles of walks.
Ours enjoy resting. It's like me and Cake.
Yeah. Our dogs are couch potatoes. Yes, they love to go on walks, but they do not want to continue after a mile.
No, Katana is great at the long distance, but that's the other one.
Katie did 2.5 miles and flopped down in the grass and said nope.
I did 2 sit-ups and couldn't get up.
Right.
Again, why is that one song stuck in my head? Everything I'm going with, I'm referencing it.
Funny. So when even in wolves, they're sitting there devouring the prey. They do go for the organs more.
Yeah.
And so when they go to the stomach and they eat the contents of the stomach, well, what are they eating? What kind of animal are they eating? What do they eat is what they're eating. And I like how they put the vegetables in to help with a solid form of fiber.
Yeah, I was really impressed by that.
That's another, I've never even thought of that.
Right, and then
Thank you for doing your research.
and again, look at, they don't put it in the cat because it's all carnivore.
Yeah.
I'm really happy to have been able to talk to Gary and to pick his brain a little bit. I was interested in the whole time. I mean, it was good.
And what's been great too through this journey of raw diet that we have been taking for the past several weeks, we're learning so much, and we're learning more each person that we're talking to. So we learned stuff today that we didn't know yesterday, and we learned so much from the prior people. Who knows what we're going to learn tomorrow.
Right. And you know what's great, and one thing that has always been the big kicker for me is that everything we're learning, we're sharing with all of you.
Right.
So it's out there now. I said this when I was talking to Gary, and I've said this before. We're not saying that you have to do this.
Nope.
But we're saying, hey, this is an option, and maybe this, clicked, turned the light on. Maybe it didn't. It's hard to say. But for the most part, we know one of our dogs, it's going to be beneficial.
Yeah, Roxy's a little on the heavier side. But she loves her food.
She's actually gone down to that rib test where I think she's better than she was. When we first took her over, she was definitely eating the wrong stuff.
Yeah.
Belle is the same way. Belle is small,
Poor Belle.
but Belle
I
is
wish we had Belle when she was a baby.
I do too. But again, we were able to save her life, and that's what matters.
Yeah, now she can eat, and she can eat properly without having problems.
Right.
The poor thing. But,
well, that's the sum of it. I'm hoping that you guys all were able to take as much away from it as I did, and I think you did. Now, before I even sign off, last week we did a video podcast. It's on our YouTube channel. Pretty Pity was the actual source of it. So if you wanted to take a look, it's on the YouTube channel in our video podcast. It'll say Pretty Pity on it. It's episode 13. And until next week, I'm Chris Green. Have a pet-tastic week.
and I'm Sarah Green. Make sure everybody realizes life is so short. Play with your pet.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Okay, gotta go, it's my bedtime.